going to do a quick update video, and not sure how this is going to come through because my GoPro is dead, so I'm using my helmet cam with my mic, so we'll see how it turns out. But drag bike update. So a couple of changes since the last video. Went ahead and added the old intercooler for our oil, so our oil cooler rather, not intercooler. But and then we've got a oil pump, or it's just a scavenge pump, but we have that pushing the oil through the cooler. And then of course we have our turbocharger mounted right back here. So fabbed up the header, comes down, you can see the turbo there, and then we don't have anything, we don't have a pipe coming out of here, so we just have it blown open. And then just welded this little tab here to provide a little support to the header bracket. Don't pay any attention to the charge pipe there, it's just kind of cobbled together. What we were trying to do is test and see if we could actually get any boost pressure built. And what we ended up figuring out was that, seemed like what we were going to end up having to do is, make a custom charge pipe and then build a box, basically, that would either go around the carburetor or mount like somewhere around here where the charge pipe would mount to like a box that would basically create pressure around that intake of the carburetor. And if you've seen blow-through setups before, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it just turned out, the more and more we messed with it, it just seemed like it was going to be more work than I think we were going to get as far as the benefit out of the turbo. Sounds cool. I mean, it was firing up, idling just fine. We hadn't messed too much with the jets in the carburetor. A little bit just to make sure, again, that we could get a little bit of runtime out of it, but nothing super significant. And we were running really well prior to putting the turbo on. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take the turbocharger off. And again, this is just a little, I'm trying to remember, PZ19 or PZ20 or something like that. Just a little tiny turbocharger. It's hard to see it down there. See if I can get an angle where you can see it. Yeah, little guy here. But yeah, I mean, just again trying to see if we could, if it made sense to keep going forward with it. I mean, I like the mounting location. Again, we have the drain, oil coming in through the top and then it draining through the bottom, and then the oil line goes across. Scavenge pump seems to create enough pressure to push the oil through the lines. So we never had an issue with oiling to the turbo. Even routed. We got our little boost gauge teed off from the bypass valve there, so we've got that mounted up here, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's all hooked up. It's all hooked up to our headlight switch. So as soon as we turn the bike on, we can run it just on the motor. And then as soon as we flip on the switch, I tied in basically the scavenge pump, the boost gauge, because it lights up, all to that switch. So as soon as we flip the switch on, scavenge pump is pumping oil, boost gauge lights up, and headlights on. So we've got them all tied together. But yeah, I think what we're going to end up doing is just pulling the turbo off and then just redoing a header. And I think the best case scenario is I'm going to pull the header and I'm just going to run one along the side of the frame. There's just not enough room. We could try and bring one out right under the seat, but that shit gets really hot. So I don't think I want to do that. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some sheet metal, and I think I'm going to make a seat that I can just lay out and do a flat and then come up and do a little bit of support on the back, because obviously, right off the launch, like, it just wants to slide you back, and that seat doesn't have any back support. There's no hump there, so you just kind of slide around, and it's not as good as it could be. So I think that'll be a better change. And then again, just remove the turbo. I think if we're going to do any forced induction on this big block, I think the way to do it is probably that like VW smog pump, and then just run like a pulley. I mean, you could see we've got enough room there. We could probably put a pulley in there and then just run it off the crank. And I think if we're going to do anything, we could just do a draw-through setup on a supercharger versus the turbo. I mean, the thing's making enough exhaust. We're building boost. We were seeing that we were building boost, which is great. But the problem is that I just don't think we can dial it in and tune it in a way that it's going to be effective or efficient. So if anything, it's just, I don't think it's worth, really making and designing a nice charge pipe. Like I said, we just kind of cobbled some piping together and some silicone hose just to get the angles right to see if we could even get it to do anything. And like I said, a little bit of boost, but I don't know, for all the hassle and plumbing and everything like that, I don't think it's worth it. So I think I'm just going to pull that turbo off. Again, get rid of all this piping and all this couplings and all this nonsense. And then we'll just put a new header on there. We'll get it, again, oil cooler off, scavenge pump off. I mean, we could always still use the boost gauge technically and then just run it off the intake to just see how much vacuum we're running. I mean, it'll still work, obviously. It's just not gonna work like it would for a supercharger or turbo, but it's kind of cool. I mean, it looks cool when it's lit up, so we might just leave it on there. But yeah, that is the update. Like I said, it was probably a couple months ago, we did a couple of runs, and ironically, you could see I've got my brake line here running up to the front along the frame before I had it crossing over here and then running up the frame. The problem was, I think I got one run. Yeah, I think I had one run in. Ironically, it was the fastest run that we've had so far based on the sprocket change. So the run was nice, but the problem was that we burned through this brake line, was hanging down just far enough that it was touching on the header, melted through the brake line. So I pulled up to the staging lane, and I went to grab the brake to start to stage right in the right in the staging lane, and I realized I don't have any pressure there. And it was I felt a little bit, but it definitely, I could tell something wasn't right. And then as I pulled up, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna try and risk it and run it down with questionable brakes. And then of course, as I backed the bike off of the strip and then backed it off to the side, I could just see that the brake fluid was just pissing out on the header. And as it was coming out, it was just literally burning off. So that was the end of that. Luckily, I had a completely new rear caliper. So I had another one, I just threw it on, swapped the line, and good to go. So it took 2 seconds to fix when I got home, but there's not much you can do. It's not like I'm carrying a spare brake to the drag strip. So not much we could do. That ended our night. So got one run in. Again, it was our fastest run, which is great. But yeah. So, and then since then, we've been working on this turbo. So again, and I work a full-time job, so it's not like I can dedicate a crazy amount of time to this. But we ended up again fabbing up the header, trying to make it without making it all right angles. Try to keep it so that it was decent flow into the turbo, etc., etc. But all the time spent doing that, and yeah, just to figure out that. Again, could you probably make it work? Maybe some way. Again, building an enclosure around the carb, and then, having the atmosphere pressured around the carb. I could see, again, if you look back and you see how people have been successful with the blow-through setups before, really successful, and I'm not talking about, people that are just running them straight into the carb like kind of we were doing here. There's a way of doing it right and actually making it work, and the investment and the time that it was going to take me to do something like that wasn't really, I don't think it was going to be that beneficial. So I think it's easier just to take the turbo off, new header pipe, go back to just throwing the filter on the carb, and then just work on getting the carb dialed back in, and then pulling all this stuff off, and then just getting back to the drag strip. Now it's end of August, the last week of August here, so we've got few more months. We can probably get to the drag strip and do a few more runs, but that's kind of the update. I haven't really gotten too much done. Like I said, swapped the brake. when we got back from the drag strip the last time. But since then, not a whole lot. Not much in the way of actually getting any timed runs or anything like that. Just because we thought it'd be kind of neat to throw the turbo on here, make some fun turbo noises and some boost, and test it out on the track. But yeah, the reality is it's just not. I mean, again, I could spend hours and hours and hours fabbing up, a charge pipe and a box, sealed around the carb, and for what, maybe a couple pounds of boost. I think we could probably just dial it in better, naturally aspirated, and have more fun with it. So, and again, there's not much. I could just strip it all down and be ready to go versus continuing on this path. So I think we're going to call it quits with forced induction for now, and just get back to where we were. Like I said, the gear change was like the biggest thing when we went to the drag strip the last time. We got the best lift in overall top speed. But yeah, I think we'll probably just cut this video here and then give you an update once I get it stripped back down and get back to the strip and see what our next few runs are like. So, keep you updated.